Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar with Grantek. Our topic today is the convergence of IT/OT and the unified namespace. And we're going to discuss this in the context of the pharmaceutical industry and food and beverage, and specifically talking about MES applications using data brokers. So during today's webinar, here's some guidelines and tips for you. Number one, don't get distracted. It's easy to do in today's culture. Feel free to use the chat. We'll be able to use that to receive questions from you as we go along, and we'll be happy to answer those toward the end. Also, feel free to take notes, and we also have some interactive polls for you today, so it would be useful to get your input on where things are at. Our agenda for today's webinar is in front of you. We are going to start off with some introductions of who I am and my colleague Bryon as well. We're going to talk a little bit about the results of a survey we did around the state of MES and MES capabilities. Then we're going to move on and attack the main part of today's webinar, which is around the functional and architectural aspects of MES and ways to implement it, including platform-based, the classic architecture and the unified namespace architecture, which is something that's becoming much more prevalent today. And then we're going to wrap up with the approach that Grantek typically takes to help customers like yourself as you're working your way down the road on that journey. We'll finally end with some questions and answers. So let's begin with some introductions. Oh, excuse me. So I'm Jim Toman. I'm the Smart MES advisor here at Grantek, and I have probably about 3.5 decades worth of experience in the industry. Been in lots of plants around the world, helped customers to implement MES in multiple industries so that they can get the most out of it, and looking forward to talking with you all about that today. And Bryon Hayes is our life sciences engineer, and he's also a consultant here at Grantek. Bryon, do you want to introduce a little bit about your background?
Sure, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so I've been working at Grantek for just over 20 years, almost 25 years now, primarily in the life sciences industry, doing automation and information systems projects, delivering high quality outcomes for our customers in the pharma space. And, over those decades have been helping our customers with data enablement, integration of plant floor systems with enterprise systems, and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, happy to be here and chat with you today, Jim.
Wonderful. All right, so let's begin by talking a little bit about our State of the MES market survey that we did earlier this year. The survey was conducted with some of our good customers, as well as publicly with our LinkedIn audience, and through a couple of other channels as well. So what we learned when we did this survey is we learned about what our folks in the food and beverage industry are looking for right now in the next year, maybe 2-year time frame, as well as what folks in the pharmaceutical industry are looking for. And the items listed to the left here are the top 5 things that came up as we conducted that survey. So that includes a focus on quality, especially paperless quality checks. OEE and production efficiency monitoring is always popular. And then we had a couple of items that have to do with data. So we had data analytics and reporting, which ties in with the one on the bottom that says manufacturing data enablement and UNS. That's really what the topic of today's webinar is about. This seems to be a hot button topic for a lot of folks right now as they seek to move in an industry 4.0 type direction. And the other item was automated quality control, so statistical process control and other elements. So 2 items for quality, 1 item for production efficiency, and a lot of focus on data is common in the food industry. Looking at this from a pharmaceutical perspective and life sciences, this is kind of how our data broke out. We found that a lot of folks are looking for real-time monitoring of production. That seemed to be the most common thing. And then pretty equally between electronic batch record, weigh and dispense, and workforce management, which are fairly staple capabilities within the life sciences industry. All of them obviously require good data, especially electronic batch record. And it looks like what we're seeing between both food and beverage and the pharmaceutical and life sciences industries is a shift toward advancing their digital transformation efforts. So that is perfectly in line with what we're here to talk about today. And data, of course, is at the core of manufacturing execution system capability, or MES capabilities. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in the context of MES coming up here. Our first poll question for today, now that we've discussed that, is which of the top 5 MES solutions do you already use? And your options are there on the screen. You'll have a few moments here to answer the poll question, and we'll go from there. All right, are we seeing any results yet, Bryon?
Yeah, so it looks like most folks they've already implemented either the production efficiency monitoring piece of MES or the data enablement and data analytics pieces. Those are kind of where most of the results are heading. So,
okay, wonderful. Sounds like we're right on topic for helping people understand maybe a few more ways to do that, and we'll continue from here. All right, so I'm going to start this conversation with some discussion specifically around MES capabilities. They're not new. This has been in the marketplace for several decades now. All manufacturers actually have manufacturing execution systems. The question is, what are they? If you're ahead of the curve and you're far down the track with digital transformation, your MES systems are probably well integrated to automation, whether that be classic automation or sensors that are out there on the plant floor and connected directly to your networks and sending data in. But not every manufacturer is that far down the track. Some have some of those capabilities, and there's even plenty of manufacturers out there that are still working with an execution system that's based around paper forms. Even here in 2025, there's quite a bit of that because some manufacturing processes haven't demanded the accuracy or the speed or the data visibility that comes with digitizing. But as we move into a world where the information technology space is becoming more of a business imperative, it's likely that those systems will need to be brought into the digital sphere as well. So manufacturing execution systems, or MES, is where information technology meets the operational technology. If you're not familiar with those key terms, information technology in the classic sense is the business systems that run a business. And they're usually the ones at the plant where the order book is kept and where the manufacturing orders are created and the high level scheduling is done and those kinds of things. Operational technology obviously is the plant floor technology. So whether we're talking about digital technology or the networks that drive that, usually it's provided by control systems vendors to put systems together that actually run the machines on the plant floor or provide information to the operators who are using the machines. So MES brings both of those worlds together. It consumes data from users and machines along with data from the business to manage the production and then report the results of that back. So the idea here is that it bridges both worlds, and it allows the information technology to see what's going on the plant floor while allowing the plant floor to understand what the directions are from the business. As we look at the different capabilities that exist within the MES world, we can see that there's basically 4 main spheres of capability sets, and these are defined as elements of what we call manufacturing operations management. So it's not specific to software, it's not specific to a particular technical architecture or anything like that. These are just the things that happen. So under production, we have things like order sequencing and processing, production metrics that include things like OEE and downtime management, changeover management, recipe management, et cetera. These are all things that need to be handled in order to make a plant run under the production scope. Under the quality scope, we have things like statistical process control and quality checks, and also error proofing, and there's several others that might fit in that sphere as well. Inventory has a space here. This is specifically the production side inventory, so work in process management. Sometimes we want to do a full genealogy of the product that we're making, or traceability, so we know what equipment it was made on and when. And especially in food, this can be helpful, because if something is found to have a contaminant or there's a recall associated with it, you want to know what its history was, so you can decide if there's other product that was made that may have been impacted by that. And then obviously maintenance is a piece of this as well. You want to make sure that your equipment is properly maintained, and you want to understand how to keep your plant running at optimal capability. So things like downtime root cause, predictive maintenance, integration with computerized maintenance management systems, and analysis of mean time between failure and mean time to repair are a key capability with that. The important part about this particular note is within MES, the capabilities that are delivered within MES systems create the context around all of this data. Each one of these things has a piece of data with it that is contextualized by the activity that takes place. In the manufacturing operations management world and in the MES world, probably the single most important set of standards that exist are the ISA 95 standards. They've been around for about 30 years now. The 95 stands for 1995, which is when a lot of this first came to market. The standards have stood the test of time. They are very, very good at describing both the activities that take place in manufacturing, as well as the data that are produced and consumed within those activities of manufacturing, as well as the time resolution of the data that's needed for them, and also how to organize your plant. So the different models that exist within the ISO 95 standards these are the key ones that are reflected on the screen in front of you. There's actually a few more, but these are the ones that most people will key off of. The activity models describe what happens within manufacturing and how the data flows, and they provide what we call operational data context and events. The functional hierarchy model, which is probably the one most people are familiar with when they hear the term ISO 95, is the multi-layered model that describes what activities take place at what level of the manufacturing process and what the time resolution is for that data. So they're really designed to provide this model is really designed to provide a way of understanding the time resolution on which data is both produced and consumed, and how decisions are made within that model of manufacturing. So we call it a functional data context. And then the equipment hierarchy model over on the right side of the screen is really about organizing the equipment in the plant, and actually in the enterprise, so that when data are produced and consumed within the enterprise, it can be assigned to a particular thing, and it can be contextualized according to where that data originated or where it's going. And therefore we call that the physical data context. So across the whole sphere of MES, which is actually usually one of the elements of this, we have different data contexts that are important to manufacturing, which this was all worked out years and years ago. And it actually has been helpful even up to the current day in figuring out what these contexts need to look like. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on that functional hierarchy model. This is the one with the 5 levels. Specifically, the levels that we're most familiar with are things like the actual manufacturing control at level 1, which is typically things like basic control, sensing the actual production process and manipulating it. Manufacturing control, which is really understanding how to coordinate a bunch of steps of production so that you can actually create a product through the whole manufacturing line or through a manufacturing area and so on. And that involves things like supervisory control, process sensing, and process manipulation. Level 3 is our manufacturing operations management. That's what I was really just talking about with the higher level capabilities. And then level 4 is business planning. So note that these particular levels are about the data that are used at those levels, and they're about the time resolution of that data. The time resolution is actually listed here on the slide for the top 2 levels anyway. As you get further down the stack, the time resolution shrinks. So data that is good for a few milliseconds probably mostly matters at level 1, whereas data that's good for a few seconds to a minute matters at level 2. The time frame for data at level 3 is more like shifts, hours, etc., and sometimes minutes and seconds. And then the time frame at level 4 is much broader than that. Now, that doesn't mean that the data that are produced at level 1 don't matter to level 3. And it doesn't mean that the data that are produced at level 2 don't matter to level 4, because often they do. But the overall resolution, if we're going to categorize them, tends to fall here. So with that in mind, I want to start to talk a little bit about the functional world of MES, or the functional world of manufacturing operations management, versus the architectural world. And this is really kind of where the rubber meets the road, to use a term that is commonly used. As it says on the slide here, it's how the IT meets the OT in the convergence. So let's start out by talking a little bit about traditional architectures related to the data context that's provided by the functional hierarchy model. Again, that's the same diagram we had on the screen a minute ago to the left, which is the standard data context concept. Over on the right is what's commonly referred to as the automation pyramid. And this descends from a model that was developed at Purdue years ago. And if you look at the way that that's designed, it looks like a pyramid because the amount of data, or the scope of the data, is different at each level. And you can see that these layers of the pyramid, if they are architecturally designed this way, line up with the levels that are defined in the ISO 95 standard. So you have things like the equipment, the actual equipment at the lower level that has the data that it knows about. You have the PLC level, or programmable logic control level, for controlling the process. You have the SCADA level, which controls the manufacturing at that particular area or line. You've got MES and sometimes QMS that handles things at level 3, and then you've got ERP that handles things at level 4. This classic way of doing things developed because we had fewer options in the time a couple of decades ago, 3 or 4 decades ago, when, for example, PLC platforms basically filled all of the requirements at level 1 the best they could. And you had HMI and SCADA platforms that were closed that filled the requirements at level 2. You had MES platforms that were designed to fill the requirements at level 3. And you had ERP platforms that were designed to fill the requirements at level 4. Architecturally, because each one was a platform, what you have is you have individual data pieces that are kind of stuck inside those platforms, which is reflected on the slide to the right. In order to get that data to move between the different levels, you actually have to create integrations between the levels to move the data. And this is something that many people have lived with for a long time. Some of you on this call still live with this. Some of you have actually started implementing in a more modern fashion that frees the data from this particular arrangement. It's not wrong. I want to be very careful to say this is not a wrong way to do things. But as we're moving into a world where information is now not simply stuck within particular platforms, and the events that happen in manufacturing are not only owned by particular platforms, another way of doing this is necessary. And that's where we're going to talk a little bit about the architectural options that are freed up by using, for example, data brokers and the unified namespace. And I'm going to turn this over to Bryon Hayes, who will ask another poll question and then dive into that topic.
All right, thanks, Jim. So yeah, here's our second poll question of the presentation. So what, if any, data integration pattern does your organization use? So do you leverage what Jim just described, the hierarchical automation pyramid pattern with point-to-point integrations between systems? Or do you leverage maybe a more modern hub and spoke integration pattern where you leverage a central data broker in your system? Or maybe you use a combination of these two approaches, or maybe your systems aren't integrated at all. So I'll give you a couple minutes to answer the question. Okay, so it looks like there's a split. Some of you folks are leveraging the hierarchical / point-to-point integration model, and some are using a combination of that with the hub and spoke model. So it's a very interesting split there. I guess it's still, what that tells me is that a lot of people are still leveraging the hierarchical traditional automation stack in their manufacturing enterprises, even if they've started to migrate over to hub and spoke. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So yeah, we're going to talk now about an emerging alternative approach to data integration that's been referred to as the unified namespace. And before we go further, we just want to address a little bit of a definition of what the unified namespace might be. Is it a concept or an approach, or is it an architecture? Well, it actually could be essentially all three. And each aspect reinforces both of the others. So as a concept, the UNS represents an idea of a common language and a shared information space for manufacturing data, where all of the data points, they have a consistent format and a consistent address, regardless of the source of the data. As an approach, it provides a methodology for breaking down data silos and moving from the point-to-point integrations of the traditional stack to a pub sub or publish subscribe pattern, and shifts more towards event-driven operations approach throughout the manufacturing environment, as Jim kind of described a little bit prior. And then as an architecture, it defines a set of specific structural components, those being like message brokers, topic hierarchies, data schemas, and connectivity patterns that create the physical and the logical implementation of this shared information space. And what makes the UNS powerful is precisely this multidimensional nature of this concept. It combines philosophical principles about how manufacturing data should be organized with concrete technical implementations and practical methods of deployment. And so, digging into the concept a little bit further, I just want to highlight 3 key points of the UNS. So the first point I want to highlight is that UNS represents the current state of the manufacturing business. So it basically reflects the real-time state of all aspects of manufacturing operations and the related business processes. So it provides an up-to-date view of what's happening across your entire organization. It provides a single source of truth for manufacturing and business data. So by consolidating data from all of these disparate systems in your enterprise into a standardized format and a standard, implements what Jim described as data silos. So as well, it also eliminates conflicting sources of information. So everyone accesses the same data, and this ensures consistency across all the applications and the decisions that you're making with the data. It also, as I mentioned earlier, is an approach to an event-driven architecture. So UNS fundamentally operates on events in an event-driven paradigm where changes in the manufacturing environment are published as events that any system across your enterprise can subscribe to. This enables reactive and real-time responses to changing conditions in your manufacturing organization. And so this definition and these that I described earlier actually captures the 3 dimensions of what makes this unified namespace powerful. Number 1, its temporal nature, the current state. Number 2, its organizational function, or the single source of truth. And finally, the technical implementation approach, this event-driven architecture. So this is what makes UNS a valuable alternative to the traditional automation stack in manufacturing. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to describe UNS in non-technical terms in case I confused some of you with some of the technical jargon I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to describe the UNS as like a central town square for all manufacturing information, where every piece of data, whether it's comes from the shop floor or whether it comes from a business system, is represented in the same language and follows the same addressing system. So you can kind of think of it as like a smart, centralized postal system where everything has an address. So each piece of information has a clear and consistent address, maybe like plant, area, machine, temperature, and everyone can understand this this address. Number two, information is presented as announcements. So rather than private conversations between individuals or systems, this all the information is shared as public announcements. So when something happens in a factory, for example, like a machine completes a cycle or a quality check passes or a new order is received from the MES, this is announced in the town square. And systems listen to what matters. So systems don't need to poll or constantly ask others for updates. Instead, they simply listen for these announcements that are relevant to their needs. So a quality system or a QMS, for example, may listen for production data, whereas a maintenance system, pays attention to equipment conditions to understand if it needs to act on those. This also a current state of reality. So the UNS always reflects what's happening right now across the entire operation. So it's the single source of truth for the current state of what's going on in the business. And then it provides event-driven action. So when these announcements are made by systems, they trigger the appropriate actions of other systems. So another example, like a finished batch announcement might trigger the material of movement or the updates to inventory or new quality checks to happen. And these are all independent but coordinated because you're sharing all this information or the systems are sharing all this information with each other. So this, as you can see, this breaks down the walls between, that are traditional, like as Jim described in the automation stack or the pyramid. So those walls between different data sources and systems, and it creates a cohesive environment where the information or the data flows freely and the systems work together without complicated side chats and point-to-point connections and so on. So we can go to the next slide. So on this slide, I just wanted to compare what happens when you leverage a legacy integration approach against this more recent and evolving UNS approach. So as you can see here, the legacy approach requires complex point-to-point interconnections between various systems. And so when you add or modify or remove a system, this requires a considerable lift of effort. So you're not breaking the entire enterprise data integration strategy. In this legacy approach, the integrators and the developers of these systems, they need to know all the details of all the systems, all the tag names, the data formats, the APIs, the protocols that each system needs to use to connect to another system. And these typically get hard-coded in these integrations. Alternatively, on the UNS, the data in the enterprise is represented hierarchically and structured in a consistent and standardized format with clear naming conventions and relationships between the levels and the layers. So this ends up becoming or creating a taxonomy for all manufacturing data. So it organizes this data into logical categories that reflect the physical and the operational hierarchy of an organization. So instead of the complex point-to-point integrations, as you can see here in the UNS, systems publish to and they consume from a central location or a data broker. which enables scalability and provides a future-proofing of the data infrastructure. So adding new systems becomes easier. And then furthermore, the UNS operates on, as I described, an event-driven architecture where changes in the environment get published as events or messages, and each event represents, like, a state change or a measurement or an action occurring anywhere in the ecosystem. And these time-stamped events flow through the namespace, which creates a continuous real-time stream of manufacturing data, and systems can subscribe to this data and they act upon it. And this perspective highlights the dynamic real-time nature of UNS. So the data isn't just stored, it actively flows through the organization. And so as a series of events and a series of responses that occur in near real time. And it's not only, we talked a lot about manufacturing systems, but it's not only manufacturing systems that connect to the UNS. The enterprise systems are integrated as well. And this is the key benefit of implementing the UNS approach, because when you connect your business systems or your enterprise systems to the UNS, the business data with like orders or inventory levels or the material cost or production schedules, these become available to the operational systems. So you can actually inform shop floor decisions in near real time with this business data. And conversely, the production data like counts and quality metrics and machine states, these flow back up to the business. And this provides up-to-date information for folks up at the higher levels of the organization, like to make management decisions. So this eliminates this integration of plant floor and business is what as Jim described, eliminates the disconnect of IT and OT, and creates that bidirectional flow of information. So the IT-OT convergence, and it supports a more responsive and data-driven manufacturing process, and allows you to make decisions with data. Next slide. So here are some of the many benefits that the UNS offers, or the UNS approach offers. And I've already touched on a lot of these, but I just want to kind of hammer it home here. So you got breaking down silos. So again, like the traditional automation stack creates these isolated islands of data, like Jim had said earlier. So and you have each system speaking its own language, whereas on the UNS, you have a common language and a shared communication space. So all of the systems, from your sensor on the shop floor to the, maybe your ERP application, can exchange information freely. UNS approach simplifies integration. So instead of these complex point-to-point integrations that are custom between every system, and these grow exponentially as new systems are added. The UNS provides a publish once, consumed by many model, where any system can access data without direct connections to the source. It also enables real-time responsiveness because of its event-driven nature. It enables immediate reactions to changes in the production environment. So like if a machine state changes or there's a quality issue, that information is instantly available to any system or party interested. You don't have to wait for the polling or periodic data transfers to happen. I talked about future-proofing, and so adding a new system or adding a new technology to a traditional stack, you've got to learn what that system is and how it integrates. And so it requires establishing new connections. And within the UNS, new systems actually just simply connect to the namespace once, and then you immediately gain access to all of this data. And this enables the concept of digital transformation and makes your systems more agile. Data consistency as well as a benefit. So the UNS enforces consistent data formats and naming conventions and data normalization. So you're eliminating the translation issues and misinterpretations that might plague traditional automation environments, where everybody has their own data model, everybody has their own language and way of speaking. So within UNS, it's more of a consistent approach. It also enhances operational visibility. So you have a comprehensive real-time view of your operation within a UNS. So this enables better decision making and problem solving. So you can see the relationships of different parts of the organization or the operation that were hidden before with separate systems that were previously not integrated. I talked about scalability already. So traditional integration approaches are unwieldy as the systems that get tied into them multiply. But with the UNS is decoupled, or the systems become decoupled from each other because you have that central data broker. So this allows scalability across devices, production lines, and facilities. You're not increasing the complexity because you're not increasing all the complex integrations. It enables analytics as well by enabling and unlocking operational data in a consistent way. So this is a foundation for advanced analytics and AI and machine learning that is challenging with fragmented data sources, or sometimes impossible if you don't have different systems talking to each other. The last item I want to chat about is around device management. Especially device management at scale. So if you've got thousands of OT or IIoT devices on your shop floor, managing these becomes more tractable with the UNS because your device configs, your firmware updates and control commands, you can distribute these using a consistent addressing pattern, and this simplifies the device management at a large scale. Next slide. And now Jim and I are going to discuss some of the use cases for the industry with data integration in both pharma and the food and bev industries. So we'll start with pharmaceuticals. So MES in pharma typically means mapping your processes into digital workflows, and these become incorporated into an EBR system, or electronic batch record system. So EBRs, they unlock a lot of efficiencies in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Some of these efficiencies are reduced documentation time. So if you're automating your data capture, this eliminates manual transcriptions, and this can save you up to 50 to 70% of paperwork time that you would traditionally need if you're using a paper-based batch record system. They also reduce EBRs also enable a reduction in errors. So you have built-in validation checks in these systems. They prevent common errors like missing signatures or data entry mistakes. And this ends up reducing deviation investigations because you don't have the volume of deviations that you would have had maybe in a paper-based system. They also enable real-time monitoring and analysis of manufacturing. So you have immediate access to process data, and this allows for faster decision-making and early detection of manufacturing issues by quality personnel and manufacturing personnel. It also enables streamlined review and approval processes. So electronic workflows enable parallel reviews rather than a sequential routing of physical documents for review. And it also, EBR also enables enhanced compliance and audit readiness. So these comprehensive audit trails, electronic signatures, and standardized processes ensure a consistent approach to regulatory compliance. It also improves data integrity and accessibility. So you have a centralized data storage, you have controlled access permissions, and this creates your single source of truth, and it's easily searchable for trending and continuous improvement. Now, circling back to item number 4, the real-time monitoring, the streamlined review and approval processes. A significant benefit of EBR systems in pharmaceutical manufacturing is this expedited batch release process. This is a major efficiency because these EBR systems allow for real-time completion and verification of batch documentation, right? So this eliminates the delays associated with paper-based systems. And your review cycles can begin immediately after the manufacturing steps are completed, rather than waiting for physical documentation to be collected and organized and handed over to QA for review. Exception reports can automatically flag only deviations that require QA review, which allows the reviewers to focus their efforts more efficiently. It also enables remote reviews, eliminating any geographical constraints and enabling faster approvals, and eliminating physical documentation transit time as well between departments can reduce the release timelines by days or even weeks, because you're not shuffling papers around and moving it from site to site. Maybe QA is remote, and you have to wait for them to receive your documentation. Here you don't. And then finally, automated compliance checks ensure that all requirements are met before you are allowed to proceed to the next step. So it enforces that step, completing one step before the next one. That's part of Part 11 requirements. And this capability, or all of these capabilities, significantly reduce the time from manufacturing completion to product release. This improves your inventory management, reduces your holding costs, and allows you to get your products to the market faster. Go to the next slide. Jim's going to talk about food and bev use case.
All right. So thank you, Bryon. MES in food and beverage is usually around trying to make sure that we're maintaining optimal production performance. And the other real large use case has to do with food safety and traceability. So the main key elements here are illustrated in that diagram on the left of your screen, where you can replace FSMA up at the top with food safety in general. FSMA is a food safety act or a law in the United States. But if you're interested in food safety, all of these things descend from it. So you really have two elements to it. One is preventive controls and another is forensics. And preventive controls are really about keeping track or preventing things like undeclared allergens, biological contaminants, and adulterants. And then on the forensic side, it's really about being able to quickly understand what food was made in what equipment and on what day and at what time, so that you can get a targeted either quarantine or recall in that scenario. The rest of that diagram really speaks to the opportunity space for using MES, and the more opportunities you attack within this space, the more you're going to benefit from using an architecture derived from a unified namespace, since these applications would all have to work together. Everything from label verification through material verification when you're putting it into the process, recipe management, supplier verification when you're getting ingredients that are coming from other suppliers, making sure that your folks are following the SOPs. Process and environmental monitoring is really important for things like frozen food and for cold stored food. And then in-process quality control is valuable as well, to make sure that the product appears as it should, so that it's appetizing in the package, and so that we're not making product that has obvious defects. Obviously, worn equipment can be an issue where maybe a piece of equipment breaks and a piece of metal ends up in the food. That's easy to screen out with a metal detector, but think about the amount of equipment in your plant that has plastic on it or vinyl. Sometimes those pieces break as well, and they end up in the batch. And then the next thing you know, it passes right through a metal detector, because a metal detector will not see it. So if you have the right kind of system in place where you are looking at the right data, you might be able to detect that failure early and stop the process before it gets too far downstream or even out the door. And you may be able to make changes and reduce the amount of food that would be involved in that recall scope. Now, on the forensic side for the audit or recall, one of the biggest challenges in food is having a set of records that are paper-based, especially if the recall affects a lot that was produced some time ago. You may have to go through mountains of paperwork to figure out exactly which lots of product you need to recall, and your recall scope may be very broad, which can be costly to the company, or it could actually result in brand damage. Whereas if you had the ability to automatically trace a particular lot to a particular production time and correlate that with the other data that were found on that production equipment, you might be able to pinpoint an hour or two in which that particular product was made, and you can scope that recall down to a very narrow window. In the United States, under FSMA Rule 204, which is going into effect not too far from now, it'll actually be mandated that the data for traceability is produced within a 24-hour window. If you're entirely on paper and you make a lot of different products in your plant, you're either going to need a very complex filing system, or you can do it the easy way, which is to put in a system that can do that for you electronically. The benefits of doing that are things like obviously reducing the scope of a recall, increasing speed to compliance, being able to ensure that you're not making product that's going to have to be thrown away, even though it's good product, other than the fact that something in that area was found to be damaged. You can avoid a lot of these risks. So yeah, you're looking over on the right, things like lot traceability, temperature monitoring, mass balance, HACCP adherence, and quality check procedure compliance. These are all wonderful applications of MES in the food and beverage space, and they're certainly possible to implement these with the classic automation pyramid architecture. Many people have done that, but the newer UNS architectures make it possible to implement these extremely quickly and without duplication of data, by adding capabilities into that single version of the truth, and allowing the systems that consume from that single version of the truth to then access that new information rapidly. Really helpful. So we're going to talk a little bit about Grantek's approach as we get toward wrapping up. The approach that Grantek takes when we're working with our customers is typically a consultative approach. We do have that as sort of our front end. We also have packaged applications that we're going to talk about a little bit, and then some custom integrations. So our consulting process looks basically like this. These are the 4 key steps. The first step is to educate and align. We don't want to work on anything belonging to our clients until we're aligned together. We know what your goal is. We know what your success criteria are. You understand what we're here to do. And the education also extends to things like our standards that we follow, so that you're not wondering if it's just our own knowledge or just our own expertise, but we really lean into the industry and what the industry is able to do. Once we're aligned together and we know what we want to accomplish, we then assess your current state. We take a look at both the functional and the technical aspects of it. So the architecture that you have today, combined with those functional capabilities, we'll bring that together in a particular picture that shows where you're at. We then look at what the gap is between that and the future state to help us design a future state concept for you, which is done in tandem with your experts. That includes both the concept of how your data will move, as well as what capabilities you're implementing and what the technical aspects of that are going to look like, including everything from your networks to the cybersecurity element of that, to the data structures that you're going to need, et cetera. And then from that, we help you create a roadmap and then execute your projects. So Grantek has the experience in folks like Bryon and myself, who have multiple decades of experience in the industry and have actually helped build some of the systems that are out there that are now at need of being replaced. And we also can see down into the future, but we also have a lot of folks within our talented development team that are able to bring the future state vision to life and are familiar with how to put those pieces together in a way that is effective and reliable. So Bryon, I think I'm gonna talk to this one and then we'll hand it off to Bryon. So we also have the ability to do some embedded consulting with you. So if you have the need to have someone become part of your team, depending on our loading, we can oftentimes add a team member for your effort, for your project, so that you can benefit from the experience that we have. I already spoke a little bit to our technical design consultation. We can help you with MES and with the UNS capability, both single plant and multi-plant. And we have really good partnerships across industry with many of our partners, and you'll recognize probably many of the names over there on the right. Our partnerships are not simply logos on a slide like this. We actually have people that work tightly with our partners, and we make sure that we are up to speed on what their best practices are, and we bring those to our customers as well. Importantly, I'd like to point out that our partnerships aren't just with classic automation platforms. We do work with those on the on-premises platforms, but we're also able, through some of our partners, to do cloud native applications for you. If you're in a position where you don't want to have the IT element in your plant, we can help you with the data pathway out and then actually have the system set up in the cloud. We also can do cloud hybrid platforms so that some of it's on the plant with edge devices, and then we can actually help you with the proper implementation of that as well. Not least of these is data analysis and readiness for integration. So as we are rapidly approaching a time where people will be using AI-enabled tools in order to both analyze the data from their plant, but also help make decisions within their plant and rapidly do things with that. The data structure that those AIs consume and the cleanliness of that data and the readiness of that data become ultimately important. And that's something that we're well aware of, and we're helping customers today to figure out that pathway. We do have a few different accelerators and packaged applications that we are offering to the marketplace. We have some data templates that support UNS integration using the ISA 95 structured model, as well as the best practices in that space. We have an OEE accelerator, which is an MES starter kit, if you will, that allows us to deliver short time to value in order to get the product into your manufacturing space so that you can get data back out of it very quickly. But it also creates a platform that we can build upon for other MES capabilities as well. And because it uses industry open tools, we're able to actually use that as an integration point to unified namespace architectures as well. And then label verification is a very focused application that we have for the food and beverage industry specifically, although it is used in other places as well, but it was designed for food and beverage to be able to ensure that the right label is placed on the product. So as your product is going out the door, you don't have to worry about whether it's been mislabeled, and a consumer might be buying something and getting a surprise in the box. All right, Bryon, you go ahead and take over from here.
All right, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly go over who Grantek is beyond what we've already chatted about around consulting and our standard offerings. So we are a system integrator, and we are a business solution provider. Grantek has been in the industry for over 40 years, and we have over 200 employees now. And we deliver our solutions to manufacturers in both the United States and Canada. And through our approach is a total system solution approach. And we have a number of dedicated professional staff, which enables us to guarantee that the systems, facilities, lines, and processes that we deliver have been skillfully designed and professionally engineered and executed. We offer services in both automation and controls and electrical design, and as well as industrial networking and IT. We have a machine safety and guarding practice, a smart manufacturing practice, and we offer a number of other solutions and services, whether it's through Grantek resources solely or in tandem with a number of our partner organizations that we work with. Okay, next slide. And finally, before we get to Q&A, we're going to go over a little bit about how to get started and kicking off your MES journey. So number one, I think you can start the process by evaluating your plant's data infrastructure and basically understanding what it is that you have and what your needs are. And then you can then send off an email to info@grantek.com to kick off a discussion with our team to put a plan in place to get things moving. And then, we work with our team to improve your productivity in a way that integrates into your existing operations and factories. So now we'll get to a Q&A. So I'll read off some questions, and then Jim and I guess we can go back and forth to help answer some of these questions. So we have a good question here. It says, you provided a good high-level intro to the unified namespace, but what are some technologies, tools, protocols, or products that can be used when implementing UNS? I can start the conversation, and then we can kind of move on from there. Jim, if you want to chat about it as well. So
Sounds
I
good.
think there's a lot of technologies that can be leveraged, but I mean, I'm going to take a bit of a consultative answer to this question and say it's key to understand that really selecting any tech depends on a specific use case or your existing infrastructure or your performance requirements or your integration needs. If you want to talk about protocols, you often hear MQTT kind of in association with unified namespace. And it's a lightweight pub/sub messaging protocol. It's got low overhead and low bandwidth requirements, and it supports that hierarchical topic structure that we chatted about. And then if you couple that with the Sparkplug B spec, which is basically like a payload design specifically for industry and a topic structure for industry. It is a powerful communications mechanism for plant floor industrial data. And then, you have event streaming platforms as well, like Apache Kafka. The cloud platforms have some of these event streaming platforms as well. So I don't necessarily want to, recommend one approach or one set of technologies, for you. I think really we need to understand, as I just discussed, like what it is that your needs are, and from that we would then work with you to help you kind of architect and design out and select the appropriate technologies.
Yeah, that was well phrased, Brian. So I would maybe add to that depending upon what your best scenario is for your particular operation, whether we're talking multi-plant or single plant, what kind of plants you're integrating together, what your corporate standards are, et cetera, you might be driven toward one data broker versus another. There's a few big names in that space that are commonly applied. If you're going to be cloud native, some of those work better than others. If you're going to have a partly on-prem application, they might be a little less specific. But definitely you need a data broker in the middle. You'll be moving data probably to a data lake, and that would hopefully be structured in such a way that you have the structure of the UNS that's been designed on that data broker to actually move the data for use in different analysis engines. So there's an entire chain of capabilities that are required in order to do it successfully. We're helping some of our customers right now determine what the best approaches are for that. And there's many considerations in it.
Okay, we're running up to the last couple minutes here. I think we have a good question, another good question around, is the UNS or Unified Namespace, is it agnostic to the types of sensors that are used for data collection? The short answer to that is yes. The Unified Namespace is an approach. It's not a something that you buy off the shelf and it's tied to a specific set of sensors or a specific set of actuators. So it's something that it's an approach, it's an architecture, and it's agnostic to basically it's a way of data enablement or a way to enable data flow through the organization. So it is agnostic to sensors.
Yeah, there's several different technical ways to move data from sensors up into a unified namespace. One of them is the classic way, which is they're connected to some kind of an I/O device, which then is part of a classic PLC platform, and maybe the data moves up through OPC UA or something along those lines. Another way might be that it's IoT enabled to send data over MQTT, in which case that data can be directly pulled in through like a Spark Plug B kind of scenario. So there's lots of ways technically to implement.
Okay, well, we're going to it's time to wrap up. So that was the last question that we could approach. So thanks everybody for attending our webinar, and everybody's going to be sent a recording of the session. Any other questions can be emailed to info@grantech.com. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.